Today on Retain or Die, Cairo Amani. Cairo builds customer success from zero to this actually renews at early stage startups. Cairo was the head of customer experience at Sunnyside, formerly called the Cutback Coach, for about 4 years. And prior to that, she was also a CS team lead at LoftSmart. Cairo helped co-found, and this is really cool, the Thrive Network, which is a community that develops women leaders in CS through events and mentoring. In this episode, we are going to talk about founders and a simple first 100 days playbook, how you get started with CS, meet the team, meet the customers, meet the data. I love that. What that really means, you have to listen to find out. We also dig into why founders are the first CSMs, how to spot your future CSMs by routing support folks through onboarding first, perhaps, and the sprint plus monthly reporting rhythm Cairo used to make CS truly cross-functional at the companies she's been at before. You can also hear Cairo's minimum viable surveys approach. This is valuable even if you have only 5 customers at the moment, and why sometimes a quick zoom beats a fancy dashboard, especially in the early days. If you stay to the end, Cairo shares her honest take on AI in CS. Who isn't talking about this, where it helps and where it could hurt, and she's going to share a question for our future guests that you'll want to steal for your leadership team. Cairo, thanks so much for coming on to Retain or Die. I am excited to talk to you because we kind of talked about this before, but this first 100 days thinking that you and I have discussed, I find to be really relevant for a lot of the companies that we're talking to. Can we start by, why do you find like this is one of the really important parts of customer success? And maybe that's even a first question I'll ask you. Is it customer success in the first 100 days, or would you call it something else? I mean, what are we talking about doing in your first 100 days here?
I think if I'm speaking directly to founders, I always say founders are the first CSMs. So absolutely, customer success is a first 100-day thing, whether you hire or not. Building a customer-centric org starts as soon as you start. So founders would be having difficulty hiring if they didn't know their audience, didn't know what was bringing their audience to them, didn't know why some of their audience was leaving, didn't understand how their audience likes to be communicated with. So I think it's so important that founders learn as much as they can about their customers and kind of pass down that customer-minded focus to other departments. I have been in small companies. As you know, this is what I do. So I'm always there, right? For the first 100 days. I've worked with companies where sometimes developers were handling some of the tickets just so that they had, more face-to-face contact and really understood who was using what they were building. And when you have a small team and maybe not a lot of customers, that's a great strategy. And you don't need a full-time CS person. It's actually time to learn. So definitely 1 to 100, you should be focused on customer success, whether you hire or not.
Yeah. And so your thinking is, actually, I'll share some of my experience personally, starting a company as well, and then talking to a lot of other founders, is that the term customer success doesn't really come into things until you hit a certain maturity or threshold, right? But what you're saying and what I'm hearing is this customer centricity, staying close to the customers, is really the seed of doing customer success well. Is that an accurate way of putting it?
I totally agree with that. Yeah. I think that I have been as a founding CS member at several companies, I've been anywhere from employee number 1 to employee number 11, employee number 30 something. So I think when you start kind of depends on your product, how fast you're growing, what your customer cadence even looks like. So it's if you have maybe a ticket-based support system and you're getting 100 plus tickets a day, and maybe that's easy for some founders to kind of just pull up the CRM on their phone, but maybe that's also very difficult for others. Or maybe you have your B2B and you have, 50 plus accounts that you have to maintain weekly. That may be too much work for the owner of the company. So it's really hard to pinpoint when do you start building your team. But I do think that this idea of knowing the customer, I've had the most success as a first CSM in with a founder who really knew what their customer wanted. It's so much easier to build structure, strategy, process if you come in and you don't also have to do the customer research or collect the data or whatever have you.
Yeah, that the machine's kind of already rolling then. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to try to maybe look at it from a different angle here and say, this is free consulting here, maybe here. So if you're an engineering-led company, because I've been around a lot of these, right? So engineering-led, built a great product. The market, they kind of caught a wave. The market took them along, and we're in some cases 10 years down the road. And they've got a strong business, but they are only now turning their attention to this focus on the customer. They've been very PLG to this point, and I would say like very fortunate to, again, good product, good team, but they've ridden a wave, and now there's more competition, there's increased pressure, buying cycles change, etc. What would you look at first if you were to kind of enter into a company like that wasn't necessarily customer centric, hadn't really thought about this customer success type of angle before? Where would you start with that?
Yeah, it's more common than you would think. I think I've been fortunate enough to work with some very customer-centric companies, but I think more often than not, it is all about PLG, and the developers and sales folks are the stars. I think my strategy for like joining any new organization is always like meet the team, and I want to hear specifically, I want to hear them talk about the product, and I want to hear them talk about the customers. Ideally, everyone is saying the same thing, but if they're not, then you also know like where you need to start, right? And then I want to meet the customers, whatever that looks like for the product. Maybe it's reading tickets, maybe it's watching interviews, maybe it's literally sitting down and talking with them, depending on, you know, what service the company is offering and how they normally interact. And then I think like most important, like last but not least, is I want to meet the data. So ideally, there's, you know, built-in product behavior stuff like right into the platform, and I can go into an internal dashboard and like look at where people are going the most and what time of day they're logging in and like that sort of thing. Ideally, right? That doesn't always happen. So I think, you know, I start with whatever the organization has, like how have you been learning? Maybe it's churn, maybe it's sales, and maybe that's the data that they have really like looked at and I can pull from that. But then other times people do know like, this is how often people are using our product. This is the most popular feature that people are using. You know, this is a CSAT score. We've gotten some feedback on what they love, or we've got like a product market fit survey. Sometimes there's nothing. In the best case scenario, there is something to work off of. So meet the teams, meet the customers, meet the data. I think that's where I would start in terms of beginning CS in a place that hasn't thought about it yet, right? So you gather all that information and then you literally sit everyone down and you're like, so here's what I just learned.
I like that. So it's, you're not just keeping it to yourself, it's sharing that across the team. So one way that I've seen some companies kind of start to bridge this gap, go from as it like it would be traditionally defined customer success to sort of hybrid roles where you have a support person that has then been asked to handle post-sales like retention work as well, not just firefighting, but hey, it's almost this like support / CS / account management role. Have you been around that? And do you think that's a decent way of approaching it?
Again, I think it depends on the product. And in this case, it also depends on the candidate. Not everyone who does support can transfer over to success. I've done both. I started my career in support and then customer success became a thing, not to date myself, but it just wasn't that popular when I started in tech. And then it became like this huge powerhouse for most organizations. So I think the transition is easy if you have and I'm saying this as someone who develops teams as well. Obviously, everything starts with someone just being personable, being like willing to help, being, you know, all in and open and able to learn. But not everyone is super strategic when it comes to, for example, managing a book of business and understanding all of your customers, like what is it, 20 to 50, like maybe different use cases, different like their audiences. If you're B2B2C, like that might be a lot for someone who is just like, you know, a transactional type of person. I opened the ticket, I solved the problem, I closed it. Like that is some good gratification for some folks. And that's like all they want to do. Whereas like, I mean, I enjoy both, but I do love strategizing for companies. I like the long haul, the relationship management of it all. So sometimes you can transition and sometimes you can't. Sometimes it is going to be more work to teach a support person how to do account management.
I think that's a really interesting point about the transactional nature of support, and that, and often you're measured on that, aren't you? Where it's tickets in, tickets out, volume, you know, what is it, like mean time to response, all that sort of fun stuff that might really drive you. So if you enter in a company and they're sort of going in that hybrid approach, which to me it makes a lot of sense. It seems efficient, but you'd be looking at how are these people sort of incentivized, what drives them, and then maybe starting to, you know, point it to some people and say, this person is obviously support, you know, like they want to see those numbers, they want high CSAT, but that's it. It's like in, out, done, tickets resolved. And you'd be looking for more strategic thinking. What else? You kind of mentioned customer focus, but what else would you be looking for in that hybrid role?
So I think a good, now listening to you repeat what I just said back, I'm like, what we're missing is something that exists in a lot of organizations that is a great in between, which is like, you can go from support to like onboarding. That is also like, if you're good at like getting the job done, a lot of onboarding, like let's implement the product, let's set it up, let's train you. Like support folks absolutely have those skills. A lot of answering a support ticket is often explaining the product to people. So I think if you are a team manager, you're a founder, and you've got good people and you're like, I want to help you grow, try an onboarding, role. And then if they really latch onto that and they're doing like a great job, they now also have a taste of like what it's like to set up a meeting with a customer and like, roll out something longer term than just one and done, open and close. And if you are seeing potential there for strategic thinking, for relationship management, for being able to advocate for the product in the bigger picture versus like, here's how I can solve your immediate issue, but also like, here's the data we've been collecting on your account, and here's where you started, here where we are mid-year, and like, here's where we're going to be at the end of the year, and be able to like maintain that. I think you've got the right person for a CSM role. And you can get a lot of that from doing onboarding work.
That's a really cool point. Onboarding is hugely important and, funnily enough, often overlooked, I think.
Yes.
Where, guilty myself of taking it for granted, right? That I understand what my product does, surely everybody else does, which I think we all know. We learn quickly that that's the wrong way to approach it.
Right.
Yeah, embarrassingly. So I think that as an intermediate step is like, here, do some onboarding work, and then you can really start to see who on your team sort of fits that strategic thinking role. I think that's really exciting, actually. And so that for me is a huge takeaway. I think that advocating for the future state, how would you go about training someone up on that? Because I think support obviously needs to know what the product does today. And in a well-run organization, if you're on support, you kind of have a sense of what's coming, but not necessarily, you're not digging into like the why, right? I think support tends to be responsive, CS, and like all the buzz on LinkedIn right now, go from reactive to proactive. I know it's not as easy as just saying that, but how do you kind of do that with that future thinking in mind?
Yeah, this is where we get into like the fun part of like why a customer-centric organization is ideal, right? Because the best teams I've been on have been transparent across the board. So there is some opportunity, hopefully several times in a month, for the entire team to kind of learn what all the other teams are doing. And this could be done through like making reporting a regular thing, and like whatever department is housing particular data. So CS tends to hold a lot of data about customer feedback, about product usage, that sort of thing. Marketing also has a lot of data, like what ads are working, like what sort of conversations have we been having with people. I have found that in environments like those, the teams that are less customer facing, like developers, are very grateful that they have a chance to like learn more about the customer and how the customer sees the product. And that can be very motivating for everyone. And so when you ask like, how do you prepare someone to start thinking about the future state? Ideally, they're in an environment, a working environment where everyone is thinking about the future state, where the founders are literally talking, this is where we want to get our customers by the end of their year. Like there needs to be, I guess, like some sort of guiding star there. But on the nitty gritty of training an individual to like think that far, I think you have to do the logical conversation of like, it is cheaper to keep the customer than get a new one. So renewal is the goal, and talk through what would make somebody renew, which is ultimately providing an amazing customer experience. And so again, if you're trying to raise up a support person, like everybody is on a lean team when they're first starting out, right? So this is common that you don't want to scale your team super high. It makes sense that if you have like a support person that you want to help them grow. And I think a great way to get them thinking about the future state is to ask them, what sort of customer experience can we give that will have people talking about us? Like they can't shut up. They've got to tell everyone about this product, and we'll make them feel like they can't live without us. Someone who enjoys customer facing work, that's going to send them off like a rocket. They're going to fly with that. And then I think now everybody's thinking about the future.
How do you facilitate that across even like a small team? Right? Do you have experience doing that where you're bringing everyone together, and how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, I did a lot of that at Sunnyside. So I was Sunnyside's first employee. So I got to meet everyone as they came in. I think we had a really good cadence of working. So we worked in sprints. At first, I think it was a week, and then we moved it to 2 weeks. And the best thing we did, which was like hard to maintain as you get older. I mean, as you get like older as a company and then you grow, was we would check in at the beginning of the sprint, review what we got done and what needed to be done in the sprint coming up, and then meet at the end of that sprint and do the same thing. I think the advantage of having a small company is like you can meet often and you don't have a lot of complications trying to manage a bunch of schedules. But then the disadvantage is that you don't have time for a lot of meetings because everyone is doing like a bunch of jobs. So I think we did a good job spreading out our sprints and having these like meetings. I think an agenda is so important, like routine. Everyone knows what they need to show up with, and you need a good moderator. So you need to be able to tell people when to table something, when to shut up, like when we're not focused on what we came to meet over. And that, depending on who is running the meeting, that can make a really big difference. So I think we did that really well at Sunnyside. And then I think leadership also had, a great working relationship. We met often in person, like we flew the team out, and the work we got done in person was very different from the work we got done remotely. So I think like understanding your team structure and how everyone works is key, but I do think that it is really important to have some structured downloads. We also did monthly reporting, so then everyone got a chance to like share what their department accomplished. And if you are not as cross collaborative, like obviously CS touches like everything, but maybe a different department doesn't touch as much. Moments like those where you can get the download is like so valuable and galvanizing. Like then you want to go out because you understand how what you're doing every day is affecting the bigger picture. And I do think it's up to founders and the rest of the leadership team to kind of lead that, for people to come in and then be their best selves in that environment.
Yeah, to get really tactical in this. So monthly reports, the sprint meetings, were the monthly reports live in person, or was that sort of an async thing?
They were live in person. I would report, my team would report on NPS, cancellation, and I feel like we had one other survey that we sent out, but essentially NPS was our guiding star. So we were just trying to raise that every month, but we also wanted to deeply understand why people left us for our competition or for other things. We were in the health and wellness space, and particularly with alcohol, like that is kind of a taboo topic. People are not always comfortable chatting about it. Whereas I've worked in other environments, like working in ed tech, teachers love to talk about the tools they're using. It's so easy to just like grow by word of mouth, right? But when you're talking to somebody about cutting back on drinking, it's very sensitive. It's very closed in. So any data point we could find, we were digging into. We also did things where we held live meetings as a service. So people could come connect with other customers, and we would have feedback on what people were saying anonymously in those meetings. And we would just try to share as many direct quotes as possible, organize them as much, and like see what was trending every month. And that was always done live, giving people a chance to ask questions. And sometimes we would even have like guest customers come and chat with us about our product. So yeah.
And just for context, Sunnyside is an app to help people cut back on alcohol, right? Because I don't think we talked about that before. Just to set that. So I'm drinking coffee, just to be clear.
So am I.
Yeah,
no judgment. That was Sunnyside's big thing. No judgment.
No judgment. I like that. All right. Well, in that case, maybe my coffee. No, never mind. I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, what a different wrinkle that is to products that people are kind of keen to talk about, right? Where it's like, how do you manage your projects? I use Jira. I use Monday, whatever, like that. There's very little personal baggage attached to that. But with something like Sunnyside, it's a very personal thing. So getting feedback, and I would imagine that product usage would have been important then, just to see what they're doing, because I don't know, I imagine a lot of people are reluctant to kind of go beyond using the app privately, and so word of mouth was probably very difficult, or was it? I don't know. I'd be curious. What was word of mouth a thing for Sunnyside?
Word of mouth was hard. Like compared to other products I've worked with, it was very difficult to get people to share some of our strategies. Obviously, with any product, you want milestones. You want people to feel like they're accomplishing something. You want to push that they're getting value from you. With a drink tracking app, that part was easy. You can gamify it like pretty straightforward. So we could easily build in moments where you're encouraged to share your results. Like you won this week, you kicked ass, like share it on your social media. However, and there are some people, health and wellness enthusiasts who are like down to do it. And then there are other people where this is much more difficult and they are just like not ready. And there was no way to push that whatsoever. I think that Sunnyside's I wouldn't be surprised if Sunnyside got word of mouth mastered by partnering with another health and wellness brand. So if they were like a partner of a diet app where it's like, this is also going to help you cut down calories, that sort of thing. So like, but a lot of, I think Weight Watchers has its own app, but something like that, where they're just like the partner for alcohol, I think could get them through the door, because then they're shielded by something that seems like much more comfortable for people to talk about.
That's really interesting. And I know we're talking at a high level here, like customer success, but that kind of what you just said there, right? With that lens of who could we partner with to get that word of mouth, sounds very much like a marketing, like customer marketing type of thing. So what I'm learning about customer success, because we kind of did customer successy type things in previous companies. Like I've done what I now know would be like retention work or customer success type work, but never really called it that. And so I'm finding it's a really broad role, right? And so I think it's really interesting that you're bringing up as a customer success person, like, hey, here's this opportunity for partnering. Word of mouth is hard. What are the opportunities that we actually have? What do people experience with our app? How are they engaging with us as a company? And you as in customer success have a unique insight into that, I would think, right? So the reason I'm rambling on about this is like, when you see something like that, what are you doing to bring that up to the founders or maybe over to the marketing team? Are there channels for that? Is that something that you just sort of build into your work?
Yeah. In every role I've had, it's been extremely cross-collaborative. There's no way for me as the founding CSM or someone who's even coming in to just take over a small team, there's really no way to get started until you start talking to the people who have already been there doing the work. I do think that CS and marketing overlap a lot. The most common way I think I've worked with marketing is probably passing over evangelist customers, but I have literally done everything from like hosting webinars to, I did some, like, the director of marketing and I did like a Instagram live or something right before we both left Sunnyside. So I'm always down to like do whatever to boost the visibility of a company. But I do think that CS, when it's working well, has the data that everybody wants. That's how I feel about CS. Like, so marketing would come to CS to learn more about why customers are staying, why, like, what they are really loving, and then creating outreach and engagement based on what we already know is working. And the people who know that the most are like the customer facing teams, whether it's like channel managers or the onboarding team or the CS team. That is where you want to go.
Yeah. I love it. I wish more teams, more companies were as cross-collaborative as that. I've experienced it myself, been on teams that are very siloed where, you have multiple teams. Like product marketing is the voice of the customer. And then meanwhile, customer success is sitting in another part of the building basically going, no, we are the voice of the customer. It's like you get this weird sort of like siloed conflict going on. So maybe that's a symptom of size. I don't know, or culture.
Well, I will say that this is something that I feel like, CS professionals talk about a lot, is like we are constantly advocating for CS to be recognized as a profit driver and not like a cost-sucking department, right? And Gartner had a great article on this that I read earlier in the year, and they talked about revenue enablement, not to be confused with sales enablement. Revenue enablement is about pushing support for all of the customer-facing teams. It is like, in some ways common sense that you want to cater to the teams that are taking care of the people giving you money, but sometimes it is just like not that black and white. And so this article just discussed that, the advantages of enabling those teams is, consistency. So like all departments are saying the same thing to customers. They learn how to rely on you, and that builds loyalty. You get alignment across all like CS, marketing, sales, like you're all working together for revenue generation. And I just thought it was a great article. And now I am always saying revenue enablement. Like that is what I think is really important for CS leaders, or if you're just like a solo person in a small team, like that's how you advocate for CS, is to explain that it's important to enable renewal, essentially. Like you want to put as much as you can into a good customer experience because that is going to unlock so much for you.
Yeah. My experience has been that teams look at basically sales as the revenue driver, and retention is just it's either assumed or ignored. Sort of refocusing the lens on that revenue enablement, which I think is a really cool way of putting that. Makes a lot of sense to me, but I think from experience, I do see a lot of CS teams fighting to justify their role, right? And attribution in any format is damn near impossible, right? Like 100% clear attribution. So how do you go about doing that advocacy if it's not necessarily a straight line of, I sent this email, they renewed?
Yeah, that's fair. When it is not straightforward, so I think it can be more straightforward in B2B than B2C. And I think, in my B2B roles, it was very easy to track the meetings and track the discussions and track when someone like upsold a product, or that felt very black and white. And Sunnyside was my first B2C role. And when I got there, I really did not know what I was doing at one point. Like I was just like, this is like, we're in the middle, right? In the beginning, it's like, okay, cool, lay the groundwork, hire the team, like set up the CRM, like all of that stuff was easy. And then when it came time to like understanding that these people are more like me, they're consumers. They're just like trying to buy a product for their personal life. And it's not like I have to relate to the director of marketing and say, I know you want that bonus, let's work together to like impress your boss. It's just such a different conversation. And I think that I had the most success, I guess, like advocating for that sort of thing when I could prove through surveys, like I love to survey customers, like that's really important. I can prove that customers are noticing the changes that we are making, and either a request is going down because we have filled it, or we have new requests because we built something and it could be better, or it sparked an idea of like, hey, you know what would be fantastic for this product or whatever. And we may build it or we may not build it, but at least you have direct proof and direct quotes from the people using your product that these things are working. So at Sunnyside, we got a lot of feedback on the coaching team as we built it out. Like we got great feedback on our customer service and on the support that was available on our educational, programming, our help center, or, we in our app, we had videos and like quick reads and things like that. Like we got great feedback on that. So those were things we could continue to do. We also learned there were some things that our customers want that while I was there, we never built, like an ABV calculator, but we could understand why people would want to track their drinks and the exact amount of alcohol they had. But it didn't really like fit Sunnyside's product or what they were trying to do. So, it never got there. But I do think that the data that we collected and shared was a really easy way to show that like what we were doing worked.
Yeah, that's cool. And did you approach that, going back to that proactive side of things, right? Was this, or I'm imagining it, part of it is that you're coming up with sort of like a hypothesis that says, I believe that if, based on this feedback, if we add this feature, we'll see a decrease in support tickets, something along those lines.
Right.
The other side of it is looking through your data to find those things. I mean, how much of your time was kind of split between those two things, where it's like you're looking for trends that you haven't thought of yet versus deliberate testing?
Yeah, that's fair. I think at Sunnyside, I had the best hold on data. Like we had the best routines and like we were a well-oiled machine. But I will say that at other startups, particularly when I was working for a couple of like prop tech, real estate technology companies, where the product just wasn't as, let me say the attitude around the product was less feedback focused. Like we were just so feedback focused at Sunnyside, but I've worked in a lot of teams where it wasn't the first thought was to like gather feedback. It was more so like, what's the competition doing and how can we just compete with that? And I think in those moments where we have not had the best handle on our data or on our our customer feedback interactions, I have found that like starting small as like the CSM and like bringing people information in digestible amounts, especially if they're not data focused, can be really helpful in getting everyone on board to like think more about it. So marketing might be interested in certain findings, development might be interested in others, your founder might be interested in other things. And if no one wants to do this weekly, you can start piecemeal feeding these people like what they want until everyone comes together and they're like, yeah, we need to start paying attention to this data.
I like that. I like that a lot. So that to me sounds like the proactive CS that LinkedIn sort of dreams about, I don't know about you, but I find that CS LinkedIn, if that's a thing, is very much like stop being reactive, start being proactive. And that's as far as it goes. Like, I don't know what that means. So what I'm hearing from you is a lot of like, you're owning, like, I got this data, I'm going to tell you what it is. Like, you didn't ask, here.
Like, you have to show people why it matters. And it's an uphill battle that can be like maybe the most frustrating part of the job. I really think I had like the easiest time at Sunnyside, but I would say before that, it was a lot of like proving that this stuff matters. And I think like getting direct customer quotes, especially if you can get multiple quotes proving a particular point, like that that is, it's just so, it's mind blowing for some people because they're like, we have to pay attention to this now.
Well, yeah, especially when it's the customer talking and not you, right? Like, no offense,
Exactly.
yes, but yeah, like, we don't actually want to hear from you. Yeah, it's so that's something that you and I talked about before we hit record was, I think like survey early, survey often. If I'm kind of paraphrasing that, and then you also had the idea of minimum viable surveys, if I remember right.
Yes. Oh, like things you can do when you have.
I think your point was when we were talking before is like even if you have 5 customers, just start survey.
Oh yeah. So I think there are a few surveys that you can always do. I guess number 1 is a product market fit survey, which always ask that question like how, rate how you'd feel if you couldn't use our product anymore. Ideally, you want people to be heartbroken if you suddenly disappear from the App Store or the market. But you can do supplemental questions on that. And I think another really popular question is like, what brought you to this product? Like, what goal were you trying to solve? You can have 5 customers and you need to understand those things about them. I think another survey that's easy to do and implement is like when people leave, survey them, like, why did you go? At any stage, knowing why people are coming to you and why they're leaving is super, super valuable for growth. So even if you're too small for a CSAT or you're too small for NPS, I think those 2 surveys can help anyone.
So the counter to that is statistical significance, right? I hear that one a lot. What I'm hearing you say is you're actually just trying to listen to the customers, especially like in the early days, small customer count. It's We're not talking CSAT here and NPS averages. It's like, what are they actually, like you said, why are they here? What do they care about?
Yeah.
What should we care about? So if you're listening to this and you haven't sent a survey yet and you only have 5 customers, it's probably time to send one. What do you think? Yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You can always learn something. I do think, I'm a data-driven person. I understand the importance of metrics, but I also understand that the whole goal of collecting data is to get like actionable insights, which you can get with 5 responses or 2,500 responses. Like you can take action after you get feedback at any stage.
Yeah. And this actually goes back, I'm just thinking out loud here, but that goes back to all that cross-functional work, right? Where one nice quote from a survey, throw that over the fence to marketing, and all of a sudden you've made some friends over there.
Exactly.
I imagine, It's great.
Yeah.
I feel like we could go on forever. I'm going to pivot us to the part of the show where we pull a question from a previous guest. Okay. And surprising you with this one, that's the point here. So I'm going to kind of put you on the spot a little bit. But
oh, great.
This is a bit of a tactical one.
Okay.
This comes from Alex Shartzis. He and I spoke a little while ago. His company is called Skip.ai, and he's done this customer success thing for a while. But he wants to know, what do you spend your time on every week in a CS role?
Ooh, it feels like straightforward, but like talking to customers. I do, even as a leader, like my last couple of roles have not involved me like directly managing clients. It's been strategy, but I feel like I can't do that part of the job without actually hearing what people are saying. So I was often looking at our survey data before the end of the month to just understand what was going on. I was reviewing tickets. I was chatting with my team. We met weekly. Like at any point, I wanted to know what the customer was saying. And I think you have to have that touch weekly. However, I would add that another thing I'm doing when I do have a team is team development. Team growth. CS can be a really like tough job. Like I feel like we have to be like super emotionally intelligent and like always on, and that can be really exhausting, especially because like when I started out, like mental health days were not like a thing you could take at work. So it could be very exhausting to talk to people all day. Everybody's complaining to you. Like people are going to yell at you. They're going to be mad at you. That is really hard. So I think like as a leader, one thing I did every week was make sure my team had time to like talk about how their experience with their customers were going and like get advice from me and like have me intervene if they needed that. Like I didn't want a week to go where it felt like Kai is too busy for me to like ping her and like grab her attention. If you are enabling your teams to be comfortable and confident and just like feel good about their jobs, they are going to build the best customer relationships you've ever seen.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I like that. Sort of putting it through that lens of startup. Is that a founder role? Like if they haven't hired a Cairo yet, right, where they've got a CS leader in place.
Yeah.
Is that coming from the founders, and is this something that you would suggest that they build into their week?
I love that. It could be the founders. I have worked with in my early career, I worked under product directors. I worked under sales. It really depends on the product where they put CS, but I do think at some point that information should get back to the founders, like whether they are directly asking the CSM or whether the CSM has a middle manager and that person goes to the founders. I do think it's really important that everyone knows how the CSMs are feeling and what they're experiencing.
Can I ask you, this is a slight pivot here, but just at the tactical level, like how are you seeing this data, right? You mentioned that you're kind of like looking at this data early sometimes. Where is it coming in? Like, are there tools that you would recommend using? How do you go about doing that? Because it sounds like a good idea, but then I think, like, where do I go and find that?
I've implemented a lot of surveys with Google Forms and Typeform. And Typeform I like. It gives you a downloadable spreadsheet. It gives you like an engagement count. I don't think I've gotten the same data from a Google Form. So Typeform, but Google Forms are free, obviously. Typeform is paid, but it's like a good product. I do enjoy Airtable, but it does have its limitations for certain charts, when you have a certain amount of data. And most recently, I worked with a company that I actually really love. They're also a startup. They're called Tagato, and they specifically make analytics software for surveys. So it's using AI to pull quotes, to pull trends. It made my job incredibly easy. And I gave them a lot of feedback on their dashboard, which they were like really hungry for. So I really like, when I start at startups, I like to talk to other startups, and sometimes that works out and you get like a really good product. Sometimes it doesn't. I really like what Tagato is doing, and I used them for 2 years or so, and they were just incredibly helpful. I would love to shave down the time I spend all the time in Excel and just read what the customers are saying. So whenever I find something that is making my charts for me, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, spreadsheets. Yes, it's everyone's number one competitor still somehow, and yet
we cannot escape.
I love it. We fight the same thing at a coil constantly, where it's like, I could just do that in a spreadsheet. Like, yes, yeah. I'll bite my tongue. So Tagato, that sounds like a really cool one. So I almost say, kind of what I'm hearing too is like, and going back to the conversation about like, sometimes just start sending surveys. If it's a Google form and that's the easiest way to go, just go, right? Like, just start asking questions. Again, this is like super tactical here. Like, is there a particular way that you go about asking your customers for that feedback? Like, is there any tips there?
It depends on what you're asking. So like a CSAT survey obviously can go out right after they have an interaction with an agent. Something like NPS, you might want to track quarterly, monthly. It really just depends on like what you're going for and where you are. There's also something that I only touched on briefly, but like if you have 5 customers, you can talk to every customer live, and that is incredible, and you should do it.
Yeah.
You should really absolutely do that, and you should be very structured about those convos and come back with the same data set every single time and do it manually. With 5 people, that's such an incredible opportunity.
I feel silly for asking about which survey tools to use when you have 5 customers. Yes, you should just pick up the phone, right?
Yes.
All right.
Zoom.
Yeah. Write it down. Okay. Yeah. Yikes. All right. No, lesson learned on that one. Yeah. Okay. So, well, there you go. If you take one thing away, it would be that. Just start talking to customers and record the call, right? Yeah, amazing. Okay.
Getting an email from a founder as a customer, people eat that up. They want to talk about how they're feeling. So yeah, they'll love it.
And would you push the founders to get on the phone?
Depends. I mean, if I am there, sure. If I am just consulting with a company, then I would tell the founders to do it. But if you have a CS leader, they should want to do that. They should be doing that without you asking.
Yeah. Should. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Green flags to look out for.
I feel like that's a topic we could spend another like hour and a half on. All the flags and which colors. Yeah, right. Make a note of that. So following on the question asked you, do you have a question that you would like to share with a future guest to be determined, name unknown?
Yeah, sure. We didn't talk about AI at all, so I think you should absolutely touch on it in the next conversation that you have. AI and agentic AI are like huge in customer success right now. I've been learning a lot about it. So I guess my question for the next guest would be, how do you see AI improving customer success in the next 5 years? And what are you worried might be harmful about AI in the next 5 years?
Wow. Okay. So can I get your answers on those now? Because I want to hear your opinion on this before we go.
Yeah, sure. I have seen AI work well in situations where someone needs like a one-off, answer, like AI can fill in pretty easy for that. And a lot of people don't care. I have seen AI struggle more when it's just not prepared for more in-depth questions. And at that point, a clean handoff can save that situation. If there is no handoff and there is just a clumsy AI response, that's a bad experience with AI. I can see in the future this raising efficiency, it raising customer happiness, it just generally, like, this is just a plug, I love Lemonade's AI tool. I think her name is Maya. I do not like calling people on the phone because I am talking on the phone all day at work. So if I can talk to an AI or talk to someone on chat, I'm going to choose that. Maya can actually do things on behalf of an agent, like update your insurance for your apartment or something like that. So incredibly useful when I was moving here to Vegas. So I love that. I want to see more AI like that. I think AI could be harmful in the sense that, like, AI has to be built by humans who know how to talk to other humans. So I don't think it can ever really replace a human touch, and I don't think it should for most products. So I think if we lean toward trying to make AI, and this is what agentic AI kind of like touches on, right? You're making an AI agent that like can perfectly relate to your customer. I don't know if that's the right move. I think after a while, people are going to want to talk to a human because there are just certain things, especially in a B2B relationship, sitting down with your customer on Zoom and pulling up the charts and showing them that you've taken time to really understand their business and they can ask questions and have a conversation with you. It would be so hard to do that with AI and feel like you are also giving like loyalty to that product and you're building a relationship. Like, you were just talking to a bot. You're going to get the attitude from your customers of, I could do it in a spreadsheet. I could do this myself, right? So I think it's really important that it doesn't replace, people with personalities.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point, is it's not just efficiency, it's like the perception of it on the other side, right? Like, how does it make me feel if all I ever get is a bot and nobody ever wants to talk to me? Yeah. How valued am I as a customer? Okay.
You're saying it perfectly.
Oh, thank you. I think that's a great question. Thank you. Cairo, where should people go? I know this is like the standard podcast outro sort of thing, but is there anywhere that you would like people to go check you out? LinkedIn, personal website, anything?
Yeah, for sure. You can go to Amani.com and you'll see my portfolio. You'll see some consulting services that I offer. I love chatting with founders. Like, I love hearing about people who are passionate about what they're building and I love helping people who need to start relationships off on the right foot, looking for my next startup that I'll call home. But in the meantime, I want to have as many conversations as possible.
That's fantastic. Well, I've enjoyed this conversation. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Peter. This was great.
Hey, thank you so much, Cairo, for joining us for Retain or Die. I hope you folks listening got a lot out of that. Here's a few things that I think are valuable that I'm going to take away from this. First one is book 3 to 5 customer calls. Can be just 15 minutes each. Every single week, ask them, what brought you to us? How would you feel if we disappeared tomorrow? Log those quotes that you can share across the company. I know I'd be peppering them in Slack to anybody that would listen to me. Next is ship 2 minimum viable surveys. You could do a product market fit check. That's the how would you feel if we disappeared question for active users, and a short exit survey for anybody that churns. Yeah, people don't always answer those, but that's super valuable data. Another thing is standing up a lightweight cadence, kind of like a 2-week sprint check-in, live monthly share out covering NPS, retention signals, cancellations, real customer quotes, things that help your teammates across your company do their job more effectively. You can also test moving someone from support to onboarding and then maybe into a more traditional CS role. You give one support teammate ownership of onboarding for a month and look for strategic relationship first instincts in the people that are already on your team that could turn your support team into your CS team. You can also look for opportunities to practice revenue enablement. Send one customer quote to marketing and one usage insight to product. You can go do that today and see what their response is. I bet they'll love you for it. And the last thing here is try AI where it fits for quick answers, but design a clean human handoff. Keep the humans involved for anything nuanced, especially in those B2B relationships where it's super important that people feel like they are valued by your company. If you want to hear more from Cairo and you are maybe a founder spinning up CS, or you are that founder that is the first CSM on your team, you can connect with her at Cairo-Amani.com. She's actively chatting with founders and advising early teams on getting CS off the ground right from the start. Had a great chat with you today, Cairo. Thanks again for joining us. See you, everybody.